All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the North Texas Tableau User Group. I'm one of your community leaders. My name is Joey Ramos, and leading the community with me is.
Tim Cady. Joey and I have, Joey's had this group for a few years. I joined on about a year and a half ago. For the last couple months, we've been doing these meetings virtual, which we hope you guys in the DFW area, but also nationally, we hope you guys appreciate that and can join us each time.
Yeah, so like Tim said, hey, thanks for being here today. I know it's a little different with everything going on. We usually meet in person, but the last couple of months it's all been virtual, which I sort of speakers from across the country. So, like I said, we're doing streams today. We're pretty jam-packed agenda, so let's go ahead and get started. You want to go to the next one?
Oh yeah, sorry, you were having some mic problems.
So, Joey, sorry, you sounded like.
When we created this user group a couple of 3 years ago, I thought about what should the goals really be about? What is the Tableau community about? And take a step back even further than that is there's a lot of great tools out there, but there's nothing like the Tableau community. I don't know if you guys have ever been to a conference, but if you go to a Tableau conference, it's just a great community. It's a collection of individuals who just love data. And, and that's sort of what we want to bring back to our local community is that same passion, right? So, we're here to collaborate. I work a full job. I'm sitting there grinding out, building out dashboards and building out Alteryx workflows. And sometimes it's good to get together with the community to sort of see how other individuals use the tool, right? So definitely collaboration, networking. Make sure you network with your community because you never know when you may be looking to hire somebody or when you may be looking to make a move. So make sure you network. And then whatever you take back today, make sure you go back to your organizations, go back to your local communities and your local user groups and spread the word. Share the knowledge, because I promise you, Tim and I's goal at each meeting is for you guys to learn something new. And I'm excited because I read the agenda and I definitely will learn something from Caesar and I will definitely learn something from Daria today. So, and then most importantly, let's just have fun, right? Let's just have fun. And then again, this is your community, so you determine the format and topics, and your feedback matters. So if is there a topic you guys want to discuss, shoot us a note and we'll definitely incorporate it going forward in one of our meetings. All right, like I said, we've got a pretty packed agenda and Tim has put together a really good meeting for you guys today. So I'm going to pass it off to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joey. So real quick, we'll just take a look at today's agenda. So like Joey mentioned, Daria and Caesar will be presenting with us today. I've had the opportunity to see both of their presentations in a couple of different settings, and I think they're both amazing in their own right, and I think you'll both enjoy them. Daria will be talking about design best practices when using data visualization. Taking your dashboards kind of the next level to meet to catch some users' eyes. And Caesar's going to be talking about using a Mapbox extension. It's called Kepler. Is that right, Caesar? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's actually an open source project from Uber, but it integrates with Mapbox and integrates with Tableau now, so really well.
So I saw this presentation of Caesar's at the Washington D.C. user group, and I thought it was pretty great. And I asked him to come present here, and hope you guys will enjoy both of them. But before we get started, I do have a couple of housekeeping items I want to kind of draw folks' attention to. The first is Tableau has extended their e-learning. So Tableau is offering free e-learning for 90 days. I would just Google Tableau e-learning, but you can go to their site. All the learning paths are free. What I'll draw your attention to here is these 13 learning paths do a great job of preparing you if you're interested in getting certified. These 13 learning paths include content from desktop 1, 2, 3, and prep. So I know Joey's taken a couple of these classes. I've started a few of them myself. Very simple, easy to use. I would definitely recommend going out there to check these out if you have some extra time. I do know there are some organizations out there. I don't know if this is a national thing, but there are some organizations out there offering kind of a competition, right? So if you get so many learning paths completed in a certain amount of time, you get Tableau swag and that sort of thing. So that might be something applicable to your organization. I would suggest you check with your either your COE or Tableau admin. They might know more about that. The second thing I want to touch on before we get started here is the Tableau Talent Finder. So this was actually shared on Twitter yesterday. Someone tagged me in it, drew my attention to it, and I wanted to share it with the group. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected a lot of industries. Data and analytics is no exception. So we've had quite a few layoffs and across, you know, all sorts of different industries and different companies. So if you find yourself kind of in that pool and are looking for work, what I would suggest to you is go ahead and fill out that form. And this will be shared to our LinkedIn group. So if you want to go fill out that form, it then gets shared with a Tableau Talent Finder dashboard, which if you're hiring or looking, you're directed to that dashboard. You can find out one, if someone's regional, whether Tableau certified, that sort of thing. So this is a great way to find folks, really anyone that's looking, but especially folks that are affected by the pandemic layoffs. So again, I'll share this to our LinkedIn group after the meeting, but if you have questions about it in the meantime, feel free to shoot me a message. With that, I'm going to kind of introduce our guest today. So if you were with us in March, I believe, Daria presented back in March with us. So she's back a second time. And today, like I said, she's sharing with us some best practices for design. And like I said, Caesar, who is part of the DC user group. I actually met him at conference. Caesar, I don't know if you remember that. We just met in passing. But I saw his Mapbox demo and I really enjoyed it. So with that, I'll kind of let Daria, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jim. So first of all, hi everyone. My name is Daria, and so just a quick introduction. So I've been working as a Tableau reporting developer for a couple of years here in Toronto, and so recently I started my business. I started kind of like my individual journey on training and consulting individuals and trying to inspire people on how to use Tableau as a self-exploration tool. So today I'm gonna talk a little bit more about design best practices, and I'm gonna quickly share my screen. So team, could you please unshare your screen, because I think that okay, awesome, thanks. Okay, great. Just a second. Okay, great. So guys, to create a good dashboard, usually as everyone knows, it is usually not enough to work on the content solely, right? So knowing and applying visual best practices is actually an essential step to help your users to design the information, to design your dashboard and understand information quickly and easily. So by the end of the presentation, you're gonna know how to plan a dashboard that meets the objectives for your intended audience, how to implement your dashboard design using visual best practices, and how we can utilize interactivity elements so your audience can explore the data on their own. So the first thing I'm going to tell you that to design great dashboards, you need to know a little bit more than just a bunch of cool visuals. What is important? It is like as a first step, it might be really great to understand who is your audience and what are their needs. The second step is essentially to know how to write what is the right use of pre-attentive attributes and how, let's say, for example, applying actions or parameters might help your audience to explore their data on their own. And so finally, use visual best practices to help transform your dashboards into clear interactive communication tools. All right, so the first thing, I'm gonna show a general, I guess, general flow. So as a first step, when we try to create a dashboard in Tableau, let's decide on who is our audience. The second step is, okay, so once we know who is our audience and what is the purpose, the next step might be, okay, so let's identify which type of dashboard we're gonna create. And so that is quite an important step because, as you know, understanding which type of report you're going to create is essentially kind of can help you to understand which format, which design to apply to your dashboard. So essentially, my experience tells me that for sure we can slice and dice different types of dashboards you can create in Tableau as, like, I don't know, there are lots of different types and groups, but essentially to me there are three major buckets. So the first bucket is executive dashboards that usually track key performance indicators. The second group is analytical dashboards. Analytical dashboards usually process data to identify trends. And the final is operational dashboards that tell you what is happening now. And so just, I guess, quickly, I'm gonna go over each and every type of report, of the report that I just mentioned. So let's start with executive dashboards. So essentially, for executive dashboards, it is quite an important thing to keep in mind that usually they outline top-line organizational KPIs. So the executive dashboards usually track high-level metrics and focus on overall state of the business. And usually we track progress to target year over year, month over month. So they're usually good for providing what, where, and when information. Then later maybe others will then go act on, but they're not usually very good for providing quick, more complex why and how questions. So one example that Andy Gribble has built a while ago. So this dashboard is an amazing example of how we can create executive dashboards that show progress to target. So essentially here, this dashboard is designed very, I guess, there are different things in design visual best practices that we can learn. So first of all, there are only two colors that show you it's either increase or decrease. Also, I really like how how Andy showed this progress to target. And so essentially the same kind of template, visual template, he applied for different regions. Now, how about an analytical dashboards? So analytical dashboards, so the audience is usually a business or data analyst. Analytical dashboards usually track trends or deeper insights based on data collected over time. So analytical dashboards usually show and focus on a specific segment, and they essentially allow you to monitor key metrics at a glance and drill into why and how this is happening. So level of granularity, top to bottom level metrics, and monitor historical or seasonal data. Now, so analytical dashboards might be really good for exploratory analysis. So essentially why and how this is happening, but they're not very good for providing comprehensive view on complex organizational KPIs. Now, just a quick example on analytical dashboards. So essentially that is that is just like a simple superstore dashboards that shows you, first of all, progress to target. So what regions haven't met the target in last year, then where specifically in which states the profit target hasn't been met. And so the last part of this dashboard is which of the distribution centers show the drop in profit. So essentially that is just an example on how you can drill, like how you can start with high level information and drill into where specifically, like where is the problem. Now, operational dashboards. So operational dashboards, they're usually the audience is operations analysts, middle management. They focus on catching red flags. The most important thing to mention is that they track KPI performance on an hourly and daily basis. So essentially they track current activity. So the level of granularity, the lowest, I guess, level of granularity. So these dashboards are good for identifying specific issues that require immediate action, but they are not very good for seeing comprehensive view of the organization. Okay, so that was just a high-level introduction to which type of reports you can create in Tableau. And if you'd like to check a little bit more information on that, you can always check the methodology of creating reports in Tableau, published on Tableau Public. Now, let's continue. So just a quick recap. So the first two steps were identify the purpose of your dashboard and the audience. The next step was essentially identify the right type of report for your audience. The third thing in the general flow of designing dashboards in Tableau is think of each chart's purpose. So once you decide on content, you identify the right type of report, you decided on visuals, think of like which value each chart is going to bring to your dashboard. And the most important thing is that you should organize the views in a logical flow and relate the views to each other. Now, how you'll share your report, right? This is also a very important step, because essentially that is in some ways is going to help you to understand which format to apply to your dashboard. So essentially, you might ask, how will this dashboard be viewed and shared? Will it be interactive or just published on Tableau server? Will it be static? So are you going to share it as a PDF or PowerPoint presentation? Because it's just like, again, that is something that is going to save you so much time later. So you're not going to rebuild, let's say, mobile version to desktop version or vice versa. Okay, and so the final step is design best practices. So the second part of my presentation, I'm gonna dedicate to understanding what are exactly these design best practices. So first of all, design best practices. These are just several things that we need to think through before we start creating a report. So what are these things? So essentially pre-attentive attributes. Pre-attentive attributes are position and size, color. So let's start with position, right? So first of all, position really matters, because putting your KPIs into the right place on your dashboard is going to create a very much, like, is going to ground your audience on important metrics and start telling a story with the right beginning, you know. So it is always a good practice to put the most important information into upper left corner or in the center of your dashboard. So just in a bit, I'm going to show you what is going to happen if you don't put your the right information into the right place in your dashboard. So essentially, just a quick message. So unless you ground your users on the important information, there's no storyline, and your users lose their attention, and they just, you know, like close your report and your report becomes useless because just like users don't understand what is it all about. So yeah, just a general suggestion, don't create visualization one at least. Okay, so that is just like an example, right? So when we don't put KPIs into the right place in your dashboard. So let's see, for example, this example. We start off with what are the top 3 products for the furniture category, right? So the next thing, market share on the furniture category and across segments. Then we ask if there is any seasonality. And the final step is what is the year-over-year growth for furniture in last year. So essentially, as you can see, like there are just a bunch of different, there is a bunch of graphs, and literally there is no logical flow because why should you start with what are the top 3 products? I think that is just like really way more logical to start with the general high level introduction on what is the year-over-year growth for the category, and after that show like what are the top 3 products, if there is any seasonality, so on and so forth. So yeah, if that is still too much information, it is again, so first of all, less is more, right? So just if you unsure that your users are necessarily do necessarily need different like supplementary information, for example, like top 3 products. So it is also a good practice to hide this information and to keep your dashboard clean and clear. So essentially, regarding the position, it is always a better practice to put your KPIs so your users start understanding your dashboard with high level information. And then you show seasonality, market share. Great. Now, what about color? So using color, as you all may know, becomes meaningless when there are more than 3 colors on a dashboard. Why? Well, because rainbows are awesome. Personally, I really love rainbows. But essentially, when we apply them to Tableau dashboards, well, I'm not sure whether it kind of like speaks to best practices. So essentially here we're looking at what is the worst flu season since 1997. Well, you know, here is, for sure we can understand that based on the size of bar chart, we can tell that in 2017, 2018, that was the worst flu season, right? But essentially here, the color doesn't serve any purpose. Well, okay, so how we can use color to serve us better? When the question and the answer have the same color. So here, we're saying that 2017 and 2018 is the worst flu season. And that is where we see that the color of the year matches with the color of this bar. So intuitively, your end user might just easily grasp in 5 seconds, can relate the year in the title to the bar that he or she sees on your dashboard. Awesome. Another example. So that is essentially how another showcase on how color applying more than 2 or 3 colors on your dashboard can just really screw everything. So sometimes there is no point of showing information that is beyond the question. Here we were asked, what are the minimum, maximum, and average sales values for a central region? You might wonder, what is wrong with this dashboard, right? Because here we're showing all the regions, we're showing all the numbers, but here's the thing. So let's look at this dashboard not from the point of view of an analyst. Let's look at this dashboard from the perspective of a person who just literally that is the first time when he or she is looking at your dashboard. So how do I know which color speaks to which region, right? So the first problem here is that we don't have legend. But even though if we did have a legend here, the color doesn't serve any purpose, right? So how we can improve on this dashboard? Well, we can leave only one color and highlight this like a specific region that we were asked to show minimum, maximum, and average sales values. And that is essentially, again, another example how we can match the sales performance for a central region, how we can match the color for in title and on our dashboard. So essentially, to me personally, it takes really 5 seconds to understand what are the minimum, maximum, and average sales values for a central region. First of all, because on this dashboard, I left only minimum and maximum, as well as the average value, sales value for central region. And again, there is no honestly, there's no purpose to sometimes to show beyond what your end user asks you to show on your dashboard. So keep it simple, keep it clean and tight. So color use, summary. So first of all, the general rule is limit the total number of colors, emphasize what is important, highlight the answer, and ground your audience on what is what are the most important metrics. Now, another type of pre-attentive attributes is space. So space also speaks to sometimes, honestly, at work, I used to, like put so much of information on my dashboards, and I never knew why people sometimes just like were super frustrated with some of my dashboards. Well, because later I realized that maybe it is a good practice to keep it concise and simple. Because all in all, when we declutter our dashboards from the necessary information, it just like becomes a little bit easier to digest for your end user. So the general rule is sometimes less is more. Okay, so how we can optimize space in your dashboard? There are a couple of techniques that you can apply. First of all, hide additional visualization in tooltips. Swap measures and dimensions into parameters. Use actions and go to shift functionality. Okay, so let's start with showcasing how we can put the additional info into tooltip box. Okay, so that is just like another example of how we can stuff sometimes our dashboard with so much of unnecessary information. So let's say, for example, our users really need to look at year-over-year performance for furniture category. They would like to need to know if there is any seasonality, and they also wonder about market share of the furniture category across different segments. And so, well, they from time to time might look at top 3 products, but essentially that's kind of like unnecessary, not super necessary information. Well, the right part of this dashboard might be hidden into tooltips. Now, how we can hide this additional information into tooltips? Well, when you hover over a specific dot on this trend, you can hide top 3 products for the furniture category into tooltip box. And so now you can easily understand that, for example, for the furniture category in September, that like the following were the top 3 products. And so also when you hover over, let's say, a specific market share of the furniture category, you can also see trends by month for sales metrics. Okay, so hide additional visualization into utility books. Why, you might wonder? Because reducing the unnecessary elements might help you to let the data speak for itself. So your users can understand their data more quickly and easily. Great. So also, I think that it is quite an important thing to talk a little bit more about interactivity on your dashboard. So, so essentially, interactive elements, like for example, swapping your measures or parameters into parameters into swapping dimensions and measures into your parameters might add a little bit more interactivity to your dashboard. And essentially, also a very good practice is, and also good practice might be explaining the content so your users understand each and every part of your dashboard clearly and easily. So now, that may be a good showcase on what not to do with your dashboard. So essentially, malaria cases in Zambia. Let's say, for example, today, that is literally the first day I'm looking at a Tableau dashboard. And so I might wonder on, first of all, what are these regions? So then I go like, well, what is this number is all about, right? So what is this trend? What does it speak for? So what is this interesting thing? So essentially here, when I hover on a particular square on this heat map, it doesn't show me anything. So when I hover over the map, it doesn't show me anything either. So essentially, that is where I just literally lose any interest to this dashboard, because I can't understand what it's all about, like what this red dots mean as opposed to this red color as opposed to comparing to gray squares. Now, how you can improve on this dashboard? First of all, you can explain what is a malaria, right? You can put a couple of words. What is malaria? So malaria is a very serious disease caused by mosquito bites. So then guide your user on how to navigate throughout your dashboard. So you may put in a title some information like select a region to see the number of cases. Okay, so let's say, for example, select Coloma region. Okay, great. So selected region is Coloma, right? So when I hover over this number, it shows me the number of cases. So now it's kind of like getting a little bit more easy to digest. So what is this all information, what this information is all about. And when I hover over this trend line, it also tells me that that is essentially the number of malaria cases in May 2016. So, and the final step is hover over a square to see the number of cases represented in each province on a monthly basis. Cool, great. So essentially, when I hover over this square, it shows me a clear definition that I put into utility box. So that in Coloma in May 2014, the number of registered cases was around 2,000. Great. Now, so let's talk a little bit more about how we can apply interactivity to your dashboard. So essentially, a good dashboard should start a conversation between the users and the data. So adding interactivity is possible with two things. Well, essentially you can apply different other technical options, but essentially applying parameters and actions are the most popular one. So showcasing on interactivity, how to swap measures and dimensions into parameters. So let's just quickly take a look at this dashboard. So parameters use case. This dashboard just shows you how you can switch between measures, dimensions, and date granularity. So let's say, for example, we are looking at this dashboard, and we would like to see, switch between sales, profit, and let's say discount. Okay, great. So, but now let's see whether this dashboard allows me to switch between different dimensions like segments, categories, or regions. Let's say, for example, I'd like to see at selected sales measure by region. Great. So this dashboard automatically allows me to switch between dimensions as well. Now, how about switching between different date parts? Okay, so I would like to see this trend by sales by region, but not by month. I'd like to look at weekly trends. Okay, great. So this dashboard allows me to switch between measures, dimensions, and different date parts. So essentially, here I'm not going to go deeper into technical details on how you can switch between dimensions, measures, dimensions, and measures on Tableau, but essentially that is just like a good showcase on how you can first add more interactivity to your dashboard with applying these technical features, and essentially how you can save so much space, because you can imagine that, for example, you can put the same breakdown by sales, by region, by segment, side by side, and it's just gonna maybe take so much space, which is unnecessary. So, and the final step is, once you build your dashboard, test it for usability and performance. Well, you can apply this 5 seconds test. So in 5 seconds, could your user tell the dashboard's purpose? Once you have finalized your dashboard, ask your end user whether, is it easy to use? Does the data make sense to you? Can you just find out what are you looking for? And the final question is, do you need more guidance on how to interact with this dashboard? And so once you gather this final feedback from your client, revise the dashboard based on your client input. Yeah, so the summary is, the best practice is always keep it simple, guide your user on how to use dashboard, create a logical flow of your views. And also I might add that it is always great to evaluate if colors and fonts are consistent. So use a limited number of colors and use the same meaning of colors throughout the views. Okay, cool. So thanks everyone. I think that's all for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Daria. One of the reasons I enjoy that presentation is I think it's, especially folks who are in data viz early on, they have a tendency to fall in the trap where they're designing for themselves, as opposed to designing for the users who are going to end up using their finished product. So I find that presentation particularly valuable in that regard. There were a couple questions. So first I'm going to start with Stephen's. Stephen's question was, how do you determine which stakeholders would need what dashboard?
Yeah, I think that is definitely a great question to ask. So first of all, I think that the methodology of creating reports in Tableau might definitely help you to answer this question. But the general flow is to start asking the right questions to your stakeholder, because once you gathered all the information about your dashboard, you can you can understand which type of report they are looking for, because as I mentioned before, like operational dashboards might look absolutely different as opposed to, for example, executive dashboards or analytical dashboards. So once you understand the purpose, the audience, you choose the right type of dashboard, and after that you can think of, okay, so if they would like to create an executive version, so which visuals I might apply to my dashboard. And you can also think of some visual vocabulary specifically for executive dashboards. And so, yeah, and so essentially you're going to design the right type of reports for the right audience, and your dashboard is going to communicate the clear purpose.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things I would add to that as well is maybe just because someone is an executive doesn't necessarily mean they need an executive view as well. One of the things I used to do in a previous life, before we started building any dashboard, was I would understand the user's role in the whole process, right? In the whole analytics process. We had executives who like to get pretty detailed and pretty granular. So understanding what their use case is went quite a ways to helping me define what their ultimate need was. So there was another question in regards to slide 5.6. Mm-hmm. So if I draw your attention to that one real quick. This one is more of a question about some of the numbers you were showing on screen. Mm-hmm. It looks like you had an average line there of 45, but the max for that particular line was 20.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So what, if you could help us understand that a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna just quickly share my screen.
Sure.
And I think that the reason to that might be that the average is taken across all the different regions. So thank you so much for calling out. I think that might be just a mistake. So yeah, but definitely I think that the average, so the reference line takes the average across 4 regions. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that would make sense. At that point, the positioning of the 45 might, maybe that's a little low. Maybe it's a axis synchronization thing, but I think you're right. I think that's probably what's going on there. Some other folks were curious about where they could get this presentation. This is on your Tableau public, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I can send over, share the PowerPoint presentation, and definitely the Tableau presentation is published on my Tableau public profile.
Awesome. So that's all for questions. So if anybody else has questions for Daria, feel free to post in the Q&A, and she will keep an eye on that, and I'll help her with that as well. With that, Daria, if you wouldn't mind kind of passing me the ball here so I can share. All right, so now I'm going to bring in, oops, 1 second here. I'm going to bring in Caesar. So like I mentioned, Caesar, I had met briefly at Tableau conference just in passing, but I saw some of his presentation, or saw all of his presentation a couple months ago or last month at the DC user group. I really enjoyed it, and I thought you guys would as well. So with that, Caesar, do you want to kind of introduce yourself to the folks and take it away?
Definitely. Hey, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Also, a big giant round of applause for Daria. That was fantastic. And she's taken so much information that I've always kind of kept, I guess, hidden away, and pretty much put it out in her slides. So really, really great job. So yes, so my name is Caesar Pico. I've been in this BI world for quite a long time, and done a lot of things. I've gone from COEs in the government to working with a ton of Zen masters to now helping giant companies merge. And right now at T-Mobile, helping Sprint and T-Mobile merge together and doing some fun stuff there. So what am I going to show off today? So what I normally do, and here, let me start sharing a screen so y'all can see that. And if anything, let's see, here we go. And if you guys can't see anything or anything going on, just go ahead and shout out in the chat. Got the chat going live on a different screen. But so I'll look over there every once in a while and see what's happening. But really, this is kind of going back to that idea of Tableau conference and what I learned at TC19. Usually for the DC Tug, I'll come back from the Tableau conference and just do a quick, hey, this was my favorite presentation, or just a quick synopsis of something that I learned there. This is not my favorite. Actually, my very favorite presentation at the conference was Layla and Mike Cisneros did a presentation on Beyond Design. And if you guys get a chance, it's on YouTube. Check it out. It's fantastic. It's called Beyond Design, and it's under Tableau's YouTube channel under TC19. Also, TC20 is going virtual this year. So new news for a lot of people who are kind of, I guess a lot of people heard the news and they were really disappointed and heartbroken that we all couldn't get a chance to hang out and get together. And it really, for me, it's like summer camp, you know, so you go out, you see your friends and you see what they've done and how they've grown. And now you're a manager here, you're an executive there. Look what's happening. It's really a great place. And it feels like I'm back with, you know, really close friends. And we've kind of all kind of grown up and seen everything, you know, change and progress. But I like to come back to DC and kind of do just a quick synopsis of something that I found, and usually do it in like a lightning talk. So I usually try to set it up for about 15 minutes. But what I really, really love there, and I found some true brilliance. And Tim, Joey, you might have seen some of this too. But really from there, we got Johnny Walker presented at the Mapbox booth. And he was showing off kind of what he does and how he builds his maps. And the best part of it was he had his, you know, his map, his MacBook Pro just in the palm of his hand, and he's presenting off of that, you know, going live. And he had this huge crowd at the Mapbox booth. Even the Mapbox guys were there, and they were loving every minute of it. I was trying to live tweet at the same time. People have asked about, you know, if I could live tweet it. It was so hard to do. I stopped at one point, but it was good because I actually went back, and a lot of what I built was built off the tweets that I was doing there at the time. Mapbox, once again, talking to they're just absolute geniuses at Mapbox. We've got Zen Masters, Chris Toomey and Alan Walker working there. And if you go to a conference, you get a chance to actually see them or see a presentation. They're so smart and so good at what they do, and they make it so easy to listen to, and so accessible for just about anyone to get and kind of start using it. Also, Ryan Bowman runs that team too, and he's just such a nice guy. But the truth of the matter is too, it's like I've used Mapbox before, but it didn't gel until I watched Johnny go through and kind of show how he's doing what he does. A lot of it gelled there. Johnny went through and he created a YouTube video. And I'm shocked the YouTube video does not have like 1 million views yet. But if you look up, it's actually, I think it's under Jonathan Walker. He's probably close to about 2,000 views at this point. I still think it should hit 1 million views soon. But Johnny is just so good at what he does, and just learning little bits of tips and tricks of how he uses Mapbox has helped me dramatically. So I highly suggest going and finding it on YouTube. Also, Christy Martini and Tomasz Foley. Tomasz and Chris, they're both just absolute superheroes at what we do here in this space. And they're both Zen Masters. A lot of these guys I'm talking about are Zen Masters. And that's something I learned at the COE was, you know, the Zen Masters are out there. They're Zen Masters because they share their craft and they collaborate. And I would bring this back to my organization of like, hey, you know what, you can do this too. And this is actually kind of what I'm doing here is I'm showing you some of the magic that the Zens will do and making it accessible for just about everyone. Anyone can do this, but it takes a little bit of time, you know, learning the tools like Mapbox, learning some of the tools like Kepler GL, which is an open source product from Uber. And that team has built an amazing product, and it runs on its own, But Chris DiMartini and Tamash have gotten together and they built an extension in Tableau where you can run Kepler inside Tableau. And that's what I'm going to show you now using a Mapbox map style that I kind of took a lot of what I learned from Johnny Walker's presentation and put that together too. So let's get moving. Also, I usually do this in about 15 minutes, so I've got 15 minutes to do this, so I gotta move. So come on, Fuzzy Man, let's keep going. Let's get this started. If you guys don't know me, I'm on Twitter a lot. I do check and get my news from Twitter, and there's so much I learn about the world just from Twitter. But one of my favorite sites I found is Earthquake Alerts. And I noticed that there are a lot of earthquakes that happen in California, specifically Southern California. And I started looking at the frequency of these, and I just thought there's got to be a good data set and a really good story here of what's happening with all these earthquakes as they come in. It's a really cool site. It just sends out a quick tweet whenever there's an earthquake that's recorded anywhere in the world. And it tells you, kind of location and magnitude too. So really super interesting data, but I'm like, I should look into this and see what we can do. So yeah, of course, notice that Southern California was kind of the home to all these earthquakes. So let's go check out Caltech's earthquake data center and see what data I can find from that. I was able to actually go and download the data from a lot of their stations, and it's such a great resource, and it was fantastic. So I went and took that, and well, let's jump to live demo here. Here comes the fun part of the presentation. So I went to their website. Fantastic website. Actually, just recently, there's tons of seismic activity in Nevada, which doesn't show up here yet, but I'm dying to add it into my viz. And with the data, I went and cleaned the data just a little bit and threw it into Tableau Public, just for fun, really. Also, I was trying out the new morphism type boxes and shapes that you could build in Figma, and this was like an hour build. Cleaning the data took a little bit longer, but just putting it together, it took me about an hour to put this all together. And this is good, but it doesn't quite tell the whole story. It was fun to build, and just it's awesome to see just how fast and how Tableau Public will refresh while you're presenting. But yes, how fast I could put this together. But what I saw by looking at, this is about a year and a half actually a year and 4 months of earthquake data. You clearly see where earthquakes are happening in Southern California, and you can also start seeing fault lines through California. You see the San Andreas, and there are other fault lines. And little things I took away from this was there's kind of this blank region here and kind of this weird, almost like a diamond shape right there. But then, the mass of earthquakes tend to happen up here and right down along this stretch of California. Led to a lot of questions and really just a lot of things that I should explore this a little deeper. Let's dive in a little bit more. So with that, going back to here, do want to quickly show Johnny Walker's YouTube video that's out there. And yes, he is Jonathan Walker here with only 96 subscribers. Come on, guys, go out and subscribe to his YouTube page because it's so good. He builds these things, and you just can't. It's amazing knowledge he's sharing here. But going to Mapbox Studio, and also kind of showing off what I built based on what he had put together, but also kind of thinking about my earthquake information. I built a style I called Mojave, mostly because I wanted to build a style that looked like the Mojave Desert, where if you were to zoom out a bit here, this is pretty much the Mojave Desert. This is where all these a lot of these earthquakes and some of the stronger earthquakes are happening. And it's just a beautiful way of putting this together. I'm not going to go too deep into styling, just because I could do a whole presentation on just this. From what I learned from from him presenting at Tableau conference, literally with his Mac in hand, it was that good. But also quickly going to show you the GitHub repository that Chris DiMartini and Tamash put together for Kepler. And what they did is they took Kepler GL, which, if you don't know, is just an awesome tool. you can really just go through, use Kepler by itself and just load data right into it and come up with some very beautiful geographic visualizations for with some giant data sets. Fantastic. Definitely take a look at this too. But all that said, let me jump in and go live demo in Tableau, because that's kind of what we came here for. So starting off with a bar chart. This is like stock pretty much out of the box Tableau. Anyone who's been using Tableau should be able to put together a bar chart similar to this. The only caveats here, I've got latitude and longitude here, and they're hidden away. I've just hidden the headers, so they're really just hidden away just for demonstration purposes. And also, I have this broken out also with a with an event ID, and that's hidden away too. But beyond that, there's not much more to this. I put together sheet 2, but we're not going to use that right now. So here, I keep my Johnny Walker naming methodology in place here. If you've ever seen Johnny Walker work, this is kind of how he works. It's sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 2, or a copy of sheet 2. That's kind of his thing, and it's pretty cool. But going back to these extensions, a lot of folks have never used extensions before in Tableau. It's not hard. You can actually just take it, drag it, drop it on your dashboard, and it says, hey, which extension do you want to use? You can go to the extension gallery. It'll open up your browser and give you a chance to go through and look at all these. There's Kepler, but there's so many other extensions you can use. Go through and explore. There's some great ones that both Chris Martini and Tomasz have put together, but also so many other people have. I've already downloaded Kepler, so I'm going to spare you guys watching me download, but you may need to watch me search for it. There it is. And I'm going to go through and open it. And it will ask you to configure it. It's beautiful. You've got Chris and Tomasz will also work with Datablick. And Star Schemas is Tomasz's company he works for as his day job. And it's also powered by Kepler. But to configure this, all I need to do is click configure. It's going to ask me for a data sheet to essentially connect to it. And really, as long as I've got long and lats on my sheet 1, it'll know what to do with it. So I'm going to go ahead and click sheet 1, click next. I'm going to skip all this because I'll go into this in a little bit more in detail. But this is really just kind of like, how do you want this to work? You know, what do you want your background to look like? If there are any hover actions, or, you know what, for click action, let's go through and add a filter. And my identifying field, I kept it really simple, municipality. It's kind of like a county. So let's go through and click on that. And if you see municipality, pretty much my bar chart here is cut up by municipalities. Excellent. I see California, but I don't see any marks here on my Kepler map. So let's go ahead and add those here. So I'm going to go through, add my points, and you have to tell Kepler what to build. I'm going to add hex bins because a long time ago I learned from Sarah Battersby how to build hex bins in Tableau, and I still haven't really perfected it. But being able to look at hexes it's beautiful, but this also looks really good. You've got intensity. If we were to show our legend here, takes a second, you'll see the higher intensities are that bright yellow and everything goes to like a violet afterwards. So that's pretty cool. We've got a Mapbox map underneath this as a dark layer. And it's showing the earthquakes, and this is pretty close to what I had before, which is cool. I liked it, but let's go a step deeper. Let's use that style I had built in Mapbox. After I learned all these tricks from Johnny Walker, let's go through and drag that up there and drop that on my dashboard. Once again, this is trying to keep this as accessible as possible. I don't know if that worked. Let me try it again. Cool. So when you go back, my extensions, once again, I'm going to find that Kepler GL extension that I downloaded before the presentation. There you go. I'm going to drag you guys along. And we've been through this already. So we configured. Let's go through and configure this here. So it's going to ask us to select that sheet, select sheet 1, and we'll move on to the next page. There we go. So now it's going to ask me a couple of different questions. And this is really to customize, really, Kepler in Tableau. And this is, it's incredible we can do this already. One other caveat too is if you're going to do this, if you're going to do this in Tableau with this extension, you'll need to either use a MacBook, or you can also have this set up on Tableau server. But really, MacBooks are kind of, or really Mac OS is the only operating system this will work on. So a lot of PC users just kind of like, oh, but it is fantastic. You can add it to server, so this way it renders in server as well. But I have yet to do that. I actually am dying to put this on server and see kind of how it runs in the enterprise. As far as this, I'm going to do the same thing. You can set up hover actions. You can set up your color theme from here. You want it to read only here. I'm going to go and set up the same filter action. There's so much more you can do with this, but for now, I'm just going to skim the surface and keep it rather simple by going through setting up a filter again. And let's go through, save that, and it's going to render again. And we're going to go through those steps once again. We've got that beautiful Mapbox background. Change these to hex bins because they look awesome and they're just so cool to use and really tell you a lot. It's almost like it's a nicer way of even showing kind of like a heat map type view on maps. There is more we can do here. So right now we're using the dark background. You can change backgrounds. There's a bunch of other things. You can filter. Kepler also has a really cool animation feature. I'm not going to go into it just because I don't have the time to go into it. Interactions, you can kind of tell it what to do on interactions. Also, you've got base maps. And here you've got your dark base map, which is what we're using. You've got a light base map, a muted night base map, but it also allows you to add your own map style. And this is from Mapbox. So you can go through and add your Mapbox token. So let's do that. I'm going to go to Chrome and find my Mapbox style. I'm going to go through to share. And I'm going to move through this rather quickly. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm telling it what my URL is. And I'm going to paste it in the URL box. And it's going to ask me for my access token. Yeah, nobody look, everybody turn around. Don't read my access token. And I'm going to paste that in there. It's a huge token, so I don't think anybody could memorize that, even though it's being recorded, right? So let's see. It pulls up my map, and success. Let's add our style. I go through, I click add style, and nothing happens. This is normal behavior in Kepler. You just need to go through and reload your extension. Once you reload the extension, give it a second. You're going to think it lost everything. It didn't, and it just updates with your Mapbox style. So here's that Mapbox style, and it's showing awesome. There you can see the hex bins, and they don't really show up that well color-wise, but it's not going to matter too much because there's more cool things we can do here in Kepler. Like I almost never go 3D in most of my visualizations, but this one is so perfect and perfect for 3D just because you can definitely zoom in and out and see the terrain and see where the terrain really does make a difference when it comes to this visualization and showing this off. I'm going to go back to my layers and that one point that I'm showing my hex bins on, and I can add height to my hex bin. And by adding height, all I'm doing here is, let's go back midway. You can start seeing that my bars have kind of come to life on my map. And once again, 3D is not right for everything. But in this case, it's just so interesting to go through and see, in my map before, when I go back to Tableau Public, I'm like, here, there's a giant shape. Of course, it's going to refresh. There's a giant shape right here. And then there's a bare area right there. Like, what happens? There's just no earthquakes right there. Why don't they happen right there? Well, now I can kind of go back and look. I'm like, well, guess what? That bare area is probably that lake right there. And that's kind of what I'm seeing here is the upper part of that lake. And that diamond type shape, I've referred to it as baseball diamond, is right there. It's pretty much where the Mojave Desert comes out of California. But going through, it's very clear and easy to see kind of where the earthquakes are happening, intensities, and also, I didn't show you guys this earlier, is now, since I selected it as a filter, you can filter for just that municipality. You can do the same thing for, let's see here, Mountain Center. So you can take a closer look. I've spent hours looking at this. Also trying to figure out, this is kind of that. So the Ridgecrest earthquake happened sometime around, it was around July 6th. I remember clearly calling friends in San Diego, right around that area there, to see if they were okay and what they felt. Those earthquakes originated out there, and folks in San Diego felt that. And it was it's actually San Diego's a bit further south, but yeah, it was phenomenal to hear about them. Most of them were definitely shaken by a really large quake there, but pretty much on a daily basis, the Ridgecrest area has been getting earthquakes, and it's just phenomenal to be able to zoom in and take a closer look at our hex bins here that have now been extruded into 3D. And, just the questions that have been asked, this is so cool to look at. Other thing we can do, we can take a look at is, let's add a dual map to this. And let's go through and let's see. What was it I want to do? Let's open this up. There we go. Let's hide my points. So now I can actually take a look at the geography under my extrusions here. And I'll put that away. So what's cool is I did a lot of research as to kind of why these earthquakes might be happening. And surprisingly, I found a lot of conspiracy theories, of course. There's also a lot of good seismology and geographic reports written about this area. But it's really interesting. These quakes have been so strong that they've torn apart roads in this area. But conspiracy theories love this. The theorists love this because right over here, this is China Lake, which is a military facility. And I don't know if a lot of this has been kind of redacted or if this is actually what we're seeing, but this is kind of where they test munitions for the Navy. And there's a lot of bombs being dropped here. Does that cause the earthquakes? Probably not. It's actually interesting to see what's happening though, because in my my amateur geology, I guess my education has started via just like everything, YouTube. I've gone through and found a great bunch of videos from geologists and seismologists, kind of explaining what's happening in California, and what is it that I'm seeing here in this map. And it's actually really interesting. There's a lot of theories, and popular theory is that there is what they refer to as a tectonic zipper happening in the Bay of California. And essentially the Bay of California is ripping away from Mexico. And that in itself is, you've got the really this Pacific plate kind of rubbing up against the American plate. Interesting, really interesting geology happening here. But my big question was, why is this region right here just kind of protected? And the truth of the matter is, it seems like the Pacific plate that's right where it's hitting the American plate. As it's moving along, it is turning, and this one section here really is just kind of a very stable, but it's kind of where all the faults are somewhat coming and meeting. And there's also tearing happening right around this China Lake area. So really interesting stuff. It started with looking at Twitter and envisioning kind of what's happening with these tweets, and going out and investigating and learning a bit more about geology in Southern California, and also taking what I learned at conference from a lot of Zen masters and Johnny Walker and the folks at Mapbox, and putting them all together. So hopefully this is definitely help folks. Let's see. Yeah, someone's asking about showing the Kepler extension and how to get it in Tableau. Do you face any latency issues when loading huge geospatial data? Do maps load as fast as they look for you now? Actually, surprisingly, I've loaded some very large maps, and they actually do load incredibly quickly. In order to do this, I'm gonna go through, wipe that out again, and I'm just dragging my extension over, dropping it in. It asks you to go into that gallery. You have to find the, you'll have to find the Kepler extension, which isn't hard to do. And from that, you can kind of go through and just add it again, click open. And really that's the hardest part of it, is finding it and downloading it. Then from there, configuring it takes a little bit of time, mostly because you will need to have lats and longs in your data set and the sheet that you're attaching to. That's why those lats and longs were hidden there, just because I didn't want to show them, but also wanted to make it so that you could go through and start using that. And like I said, I could have dropped my Mapbox key here. Also, you know, setting up read-only modes or themes, I can change it from a dark to a light theme here. Setting up hover actions that'll work for like highlighting. But really just doing the click and filter is probably one of the cooler things too. So hopefully that helps. And of course, this is where it freezes out. As far as latency, Kepler is built for some very massive data sets. It works so fast, and it uses a lot of the, I believe it's the WebGL within the machines. I think that's what is keeping it from working on Windows machines. So that's kind of the one thing it does, and it does it so well and so quickly. So yeah, I'm gonna step back for a second while that opens. It's of course, this is where it takes its time. Let me do that. Oh, that's why. Identifying field, municipality, want to save, and once again it'll load. And that was really it. That's kind of the hardest part of it. There's so much more to Kepler that I'm not showing, but really for that you can definitely go out and explore. And I mean, I hope I kind of open the door to a lot more people going out and exploring and building visualizations with this. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Caesar.
Anybody else may have questions or
yeah,
actually, I don't think I saw anything come from the chat. Tim, did you see anything?
No, I didn't see any other questions. I actually have one, just out of curiosity. So the lat and longitudes you include in your bar chart, do those have to be in the view itself, or can they be maybe as attributes on the detail?
Tim, are you on mute?
No. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Maybe I'm not hearing it. Oh no.
I can hear you.
Okay, now I can hear you. Yep. Sorry, my speakers flipped over.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I was saying is the latitude and longitude you have in your bar chart.
Yeah.
Do those have to be in the view itself, or can they be shown as or hidden as attributes within the detail shelf or detail card?
I think you can have them as attributes. I have not tried it, but I'm pretty sure you can have them there as attributes.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. I've never played around with this, so I want to give it a shot.
It is really fun and cool, and there's so many. Once I got back from conference, I opened it up and started working with it, and really just kind of the opportunities and the use cases started flooding in as to what you could do with it, and really what you could build rather quickly. I think the hardest part of it sometimes is just getting the data shaped properly.
Yeah.
For visualization, but I think that's usually the case with just about anything.
Really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing with the group.
You bet. Hopefully everybody liked that, and we'll see a lot more Kepler visualizations coming through.
Absolutely.
Hang on.
So if anyone has questions for Caesar, go ahead, and we'll be online here for a few more minutes. I got to share one thing before we take off. So go ahead and post them in the Q&A, and we'll get to those questions as soon as we can. So we have one last thing before we wrap up for the day. Give me just a second. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So in front of you, you should be seeing two versions of the Tableau data connection screen, data source screen. What I want to talk about really briefly before we head out today is the new Tableau data model functionality. I've been playing with this the last couple of days and I found it really interesting. And as folks upgrade their version over the coming weeks and months, I think this is something that will be a little bit different. So folks will have to kind of get used to it. And I want to get out in front of folks and share it with some of y'all. So with that, what I'm going to do is I've connected to a data source that Tableau has been using to demo this new data model functionality. If you were at TC or if you watched the live webcast, you've heard this referred to as the noodle, and you'll see why in just a second here. It's just like you used to be able to do in previous versions. You go ahead and drag in one of your data sources here, right? You'll see it pop up. We're going to look at the books table, for example. You'll see it looks a little different. So on the left here, you'll see I have Tableau version 2020.2. On the right, I'm going to keep that up for a second, but I'll end up getting rid of it. This is 20.1. So you'll see it looks a little different, but not a lot changing there. Now, what I want to do in this case to kind of demo this functionality is I want to build a relationship between the book table and the author table. So you'll notice when I do that, that little noodle, that little string gets pulled in, as opposed to the usual Venn diagram that we use for join logic in previous versions. So there is something to be said for kind of what level we need to think about these relationships on. Let's see if I still have the window open. I do. Okay. So there's a great little blog post on Tableau's website. So the new relationship layer should be thought of, excuse me while I track it down here. I'm not seeing it right off bat here, but you can think of this new relationship layer as the logical layer and the old data layer as a physical layer. So this is where we're physically creating our joins, our unions. This logical layer is where we're just building the relationships between tables, but not physically joining them together. So going back to kind of the point at hand, when I drag in that second author table, it's going to ask me to edit the relationship. Tableau is going to try to suggest to me what that relationship is. Of course, you can add other fields. Just for the sake of the example, we're not going to do that. If you're familiar with cardinality, you can manipulate that as well as referential integrity. We're going to get into that in another session when we have more time to kind of go into detail. Not something I want to kind of overload you guys with right now. What you'll notice, however, I'm going to expand to 2020.2, is both of these tables at the moment still exist as individual tables, right? So you have your book table, you have your author table. In the older version of Tableau, or any older version of Tableau, in this case 2020.1, you can see the book and author table have now become one with this inner join. I'm going to switch up to a left join real quick. So what's happening is it's pulling in all the books listed in my book table and pulling in any of the authors that are relevant to those books. Now, what we could possibly be missing here is authors who have not published books or still in the process of getting those books published. What's interesting about this new data model relationship is that's no longer the case. The author table and the book table now exist as two separate tables, still maintaining each record within it. So I'm going to show you what I mean real quick. So what we're going to do is bring in our author ID. And I thought we had some, oh, I'm sorry, that's the author ID of the book. I'm going to bring in my author first name and last name. That's probably a little bit easier to reference. I'm also going to bring in count of books here. And you can see here that we have quite a few authors here that have a 0. And that's because the author table is still As far as Tableau is concerned, its own separate table, and it's still bringing in those zero count authors. That's different from the previous version of Tableau in 2020.1, where we would have lost that. So I'm going to show you that over here as well. So remember, we did a left join here between book and author. Let's do count book ID. Right, so we no longer have those zeros. We lost those zeros with our left join. So to me, the name of the game here with the new relationship feature is flexibility, right? So this new relationship noodle, if you will, gives you a lot more flexibility with the way you work with your data. Maybe makes it less time consuming to prepare the data on the front end. I will mention, however, it is still possible to do those joins if you wanted to. What you do is click that drop down caret, do an open, and we'll bring in book info. You can still do those left and right joins. Actually, just for the sake of knowing what these data source is, I know this actually needs to be joined to book ID 1 plus book ID 2. Right. So here, that's the physical layer that we would have manipulated in version 2020.1. And if we go back to our logical layer now, this noodle relationship, you can see that this Venn diagram is signifying that book table now has a left join or some sort of join within it. So we're going to go into detail about this in future meetings. I don't want to go too far into it now because one, I'm fairly new to it, and two, I think there's going to be quite a few different questions about how things work, and maybe we're just not at that point yet. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions, and I'm going to bring in Caesar and Daria. If you guys are still on, feel free to jump back in. If anyone has any questions about any of the presentations, I'll give it just a second. And I'm going to share my screen back to the original presentation. If you are on LinkedIn, I would invite you to join our LinkedIn group. All the content from today will be shared there. We are also on Twitter at ntx_TUG. We try to promote our events there. We also promote other user group events, especially the virtual ones. So some of our folks who are local to DFW want to check out what other groups are doing. And we try to get on there and share some of our favorite blogs, some of our favorite content. So it's a good follow if you use Twitter. Let's see, do we have any questions?
There's a great one in there about data sets and looking at data sets and kind of where do people go to find data sets?
Yeah, so is this the stock analytics, real estate rent rates? Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, that's actually really good, is looking at different data sets and kind of going through and finding them. I know personally I like looking at kind of open government data sets, and there are a lot of great places to find those. Because it's interesting because they're out there for free and they're just massive. Sometimes they're really dirty too. You have to really do a lot of work cleaning them up.
That is the issue.
But what's interesting is I found that there are a lot of companies that will just take that public data, clean it up, and then sell it to organizations for tons of money in giant subscriptions. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I see someone mentioned Kaggle. That's a great place to get some data sets. I found a couple interesting ones on there. I think that's actually, I found a data set on there that was the script from The Office. Every line from every episode, right? And I was playing around with that because I'm a huge Office fan. But I use data.world as well. That's a great reference if you're looking for data sets.
So many great data sets in data.world too. I've lucked out so many times and just kind of wondering, I wonder if there's a data set on, NCAA basketball championships, March Madness type stuff. And you go through there and you find, hey, look, my friend Ben put one up here. It's really awesome. It's really good.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it looks like there's another question or statement maybe about COVID-19 data in comparisons to regular flu data. I don't know about the regular flu data. I know, of course, Tableau has their COVID-19 resource hub that you can refer to. I don't know what they have there in regards to regular flu data, so I'll have to get back to you on that one.
I'm sure there's so many sites that we actually go through and aggregate. A lot of it uses the Johns Hopkins data sets. I know Star Schema that they actually work in conjunction with Snowflake. So I actually just signed up for my Snowflake account so I can use their live data. And a lot of people have been building visualizations off of that. As far as flu data, I'd imagine, CDC or a lot of other national websites internationally, maybe WHO might have some really good resources there. I've been wondering on just kind of the cause of death and numbers, and looking at, just seeing how many people have just generally those the rate of death, and how many people have been dying.
Yeah, the big thing there is, well, it seems to be pre-existing conditions, right? Like age demographics and pre-existing conditions are an important factor when you're looking at those mortality rates. The one thing I will say, if you're comparing COVID-19 data to regular flu data, is be careful about the story you tell. Right, we're looking at less than a year of COVID-19 data being captured at this point, and we have several, hundreds of years worth of flu data. So it's not necessarily apples to apples. We still got some work to do capturing that data and comparing it. So. All right, with that, I don't see any other questions. So I want to thank Caesar. I want to thank Daria for joining us, hanging out with us today. Thank you guys so much. Anything you want to add before we get off here?
Just a thank you to everyone. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Daria and Caesar for taking the time to present today. I'd like to thank Tim for putting this whole meeting together. Thank you very much. And then I think next month, Tim, we are doing a joint tug. Is that correct?
That's right. We're trying to put something together with the folks in Boston. So we're looking at a joint user group meeting with the Boston user group and ourselves. We haven't set that in stone yet, but we're working on that, and hopefully we'll have something for you soon.
Yeah. All right. Again, if you guys just want to, if you have any questions, just reach out to us via our LinkedIn group or through our Twitter account. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Much, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.